Hi, I'm Graham Robinson, and this is turning childhood pain into adult healing. So, what am I talking about? I'm talking about childhood trauma, early childhood trauma, and the way it impacts us as adults. Today, I want to talk about shame and what shame does to us, because shame is really at the core. Now, I'm sure at some stage as a child, perhaps even as an adult, you've taken something from a store, slipped some sweets into your pocket, taken something small, and of course you feel embarrassed or potentially shameful about that later on. Perhaps your best friend's girlfriend or partner decided to make eyes towards you and you got inclined to get involved. And after that, you may feel embarrassed. I know that's happened to me when I was much younger. I was 14 and I turned up at her place, and it was a house that had on stilts. So we were downstairs, and her boyfriend, a good friend of mine, turned up. Driven there by his brother, I hid in the laundry, which was downstairs, and I'm standing against or behind the door. And his brother wanders past and sees me, but didn't say anything to him. But I felt terrible. Didn't see her again. That didn't help though. That's the sort of shame that you should have. That's the shame that keeps our morals and keeps us at least somewhat in control. But what I'm talking about is the toxic shame, and that comes from early childhood trauma. That comes when the child is unloved, abused, but whether that be physically, sexually, or emotionally. And that shame develops because it means that we can't escape that shame as a child, obviously, in the home, and it's continuous. We're under that pressure the whole time. And when a child feels that they're unloved or abandoned or anything like that, they look at it in black and white terms. So they see that if they're not loved, then they must be unlovable. That's the only way they can think about it. So therefore, they think that if they can create a false persona, a different person with inside themselves, hide the real self, then maybe they'll be loved. But of course, that's not the way it works. So what happens is that they don't receive the love, and this false persona carries on through into our adulthood. And so if you've ever felt anger that is just out of control in a few moments, so you go from 1 to 10 in anger, even road rage are examples. Domestic violence is obviously an example of where people have lost control. If you find that you get anxious over certain things, but you don't know why. It might be noise makes you anxious. It might be too many people around you. You feel low self-esteem, that you don't deserve anything. You see others at work achieving. You're as good or better, perhaps, but you don't get there. And you wonder why. Why can't I get it? But then when you think about getting it, you start to think, no, I'm not good enough. And we have an inner voice when you suffer from childhood trauma that tells us we're not good enough, that we don't deserve these things, and that we're not going to get them. So, what you have to do is you have to overcome, obviously, all of those, but it's complex because the trauma is very deep. And not only is it deep, but it's intertwined with a whole range of other traumas. So, shame may be the core, but then you have, as I mentioned, all these other different traumas happening as well, like having a healthy relationship. If you suffer from shame, you'll find that one of the things, and abandonment as a child, one of the things that will happen is that you won't trust. And if you don't trust, when you get into a relationship, quite often, you will feel that this person may abandon you. That's the fear that you have because that's what you've experienced. So what you do is you end up creating a situation where you drive them away before they can leave you. So you end up doing what you fear the most, but because you've driven them away, you can cope with it. So you find that you have very difficult relationships. And of course, you find that people don't understand that, people around you, even friends. You may, for example, I've always experienced that I don't feel like I belong, even when I'm among a group of friends. I'll be at a party, I'll stand at the rear of the party wondering, why don't I feel like I belong here? These are all very good friends. They all know me, they all like me, I like them, but I stand there and I feel like I don't belong. The trouble is that you don't feel like you belong anywhere. Part of this whole early childhood trauma and the shame is that you develop a belief that you just simply don't belong in this world, that you don't belong here, that you're not part of it. And it's very hard to shake those feelings. So some of the things that you can do. So in this series of videos, I'll give you some tips on small ways that you can help yourself just to ease it. What I will say is you need professional help. You need a professional therapist, preferably if you're talking about shame, one that deals in shame-based trauma. And if any of the things I've mentioned, and we'll talk about all these individual traumas in more detail through this series of videos, but if any of them sort of resonate with you in any way, then I really recommend that you start looking for a therapist to get some help because you will feel so much better, even just when you start, when you acknowledge that you have the trauma and when you start to work on it, you will feel a whole world of difference. And the people around you will see that and it'll be better for you. Now, some things you can do. I talked about the inner voice. If you have this inner voice who always criticizes you, tells you not good enough, tells you you can't achieve, give it a name. I gave mine the name of Ralph, so I apologize to any Ralph viewers. But it seemed like an appropriate name at the time. So when the voice starts, I just say, no, Ralph, stop. And because I can use a name, rather than some sort of object that I don't quite focus on, because I use a name, I can stop it. Now, it takes some time, doesn't always work, and more often than not, it tries to push back because this is deep-seated in you. It's been there for years. So you say it again and you keep working on it, and it will work. Eventually, you will stop the voice in your head. Also, if you take care of yourself, and really, ultimately, with childhood trauma, loving yourself is the best thing that you can do, and have someone who is loving towards you, because that's what your inner child missed out on, is the love. So if you can find that, and if you can love yourself, that will be a huge start. Do some creative work, painting, pottery, whatever it might be. Exercise is good. Also, walking on beach, in water, in salt water is good. And walking in nature. All of those things will help your body and your nervous system come under more control, because the trauma is in your nervous system. That's where it lodges, that's where it stays, that's why we're triggered. And we'll talk about that more. But that's why things suddenly can go from 1 to 10, and we don't know why. But it's a trigger from our childhood. So if you do some of those things, you can then try and manage it a little bit better. And I'll give you in a moment a way to manage if you have anxiety or anger start to build up in you. But it's very important to recognize that you've been through this. In my generation and many other generations, of course, if we were hit, we'd sort of go, yeah, well, that's what happens and that's part of it. We don't realize that it actually is causing us damage. We try and push it aside and just keep going. If your parents are unloving and not available to you emotionally, as mine weren't, then that's an added complexity on top of that, and that builds and builds and creates even more problems. So you've got to acknowledge all of that and understand that this happened to you and it wasn't your fault. That's really key. Understand it just wasn't your fault. All right, so if you feel anxiety coming on, you feel some anger coming on, you feel unsettled even, simply place your hand over your chest near your heart and breathe deeply, or even just breathe normally, but breathe in and out, and just do that for a few moments. Close your eyes if you're not driving or wherever. One thing I will say, if you're on a bus or on the train, um, I did it once, and somebody came over and asked me if I was having a heart attack. It might be because of my age, but anyway, I assured them I wasn't. So do that. Breathe in, breathe out, just for a few moments, few minutes, at least 2 to 3 minutes. And it'll allow your nervous system to control. It'll break the cycle of the anxiety building and the anger building. Now, it's not a cure. It's not, you can't, there's no such thing really as cure for early childhood trauma. You will just get to manage it. You will heal some areas and so on. But it will help you manage it and maintain it and stop you from going into the rage or stop you from getting really anxious. So try it. You can even try it without feeling like that, and it still helps your nervous system just by focusing on your body. The touch helps as well, because you may not have been touched in a loving way as a child. That helps as well. I hope you get something out of this. If you would like to know more about me, there are links below to my website, also to the two books I've written, Pain, Loss and Desire, and Shattered Innocence, Healing the Invisible Wounds of Childhood Trauma. Next video, we're going to talk about how you can discover if you have childhood trauma through a questionnaire that's called the Adverse Childhood Experiences. And we will look at those and see, you can assess how many, there's 10 in this questionnaire, what they mean, and how each one will impact you. We'll look through all of those. So join me next time, won't you? Thanks.